Alright, so this is really mind-blowing, and you can see that this is a simple dark mode application which I upgraded from Angular Material version 12 to version 19 now. And you can see the dark mode works really nicely. But let me show you the code. So this is the commented code. Here is all of the code that was actually required in Angular Material version 12 to set up this theme, and just see what I required for Angular version 19. So I just required this, and I just required this to set up the dark mode. So you can see how much the code has shortened here, and that is why I'm so excited to talk about the mat.theme mixin in this video, which is the new mixin introduced by Material version 19. This mixin basically makes it so super short and sweet to set up your Angular Material global styles, but it's also really powerful because it can be scoped to any level that you want in your application. So hey everyone, I'm Zoeb Khan and I'm a senior front-end engineer. And on this channel, we build real cool projects with Angular, and especially I discuss a lot about Angular Material because I've been using it for a long time. For this version 19, Material team has really simplified the APIs, and the crux of the simplification is basically in the mat.theme mixin, which sort of the one mixin to rule them all, you can say, just like in Lord of the Rings. We had one ring to rule them all. So this mat.theme mixin is basically all you need to remember to actually set your global Angular Material theming. And I'm going to show you exactly how we do that using my app here. And you can see the app now has no styling at this point. So we're going to add styling step by step. And then we're also going to look at overrides and mat theme overrides. So this is just special cases where you want to override your specific design tokens. And then you will have component overrides, which you can actually override specific component design tokens as well. Okay. So we're going to look at all of this step by step in the context of our simple dark mode app. So let's get started. Okay. So first, let's look at our app again. And so this is a simple app, Angular Material 19 app. And you can see there's no styling applied to it because I only have my previous styling, which was something like this, applied here. You can see that we had to create these variables, these themes separately, and then we need to include these like this. But we don't need all of that. So let's clear all of this. This is history now. So first we want to add an initial default theme to it. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, so if you go in your theming guide here, you can see that they have this example of include mat.theme. So that's all that we're going to do. We're going to go in HTML and we're going to do at include. And remember, we still need this use Angular material as mat because it allows us to use the material theme mixin. Okay, so we're going to do mat.theme here, and then within this we can specify three sort of dimensions to our theme. The first one is the color, the second one is the typography, and the third one is the density. Now in this version 19, what they've done is that they've made this really simple. So you can basically just give a palette to this. So we're going to get just, there are a set of palettes that are given here. You can go down here and you can see the list of all these palettes here. So these are actually the built-in palettes that are provided. We can create our custom palettes as well, but that's for another video. So here what we're going to do is we're just going to use the Azure palette here. I really love the Azure palette here. Okay, so we're going to do Azure palette, and this is basically all you need. And let's save this and see what effect this has on our application. Great. So you can see now that our application looks slightly better. You can see you have this color in your this background and this color, and you have this basic primary color being applied to it. So basically this is the bare minimum that you need to set up your Angular material theme now in version 19. Okay, but of course you can add your typography and you can add your density as well, but in this case we don't need it because it's a default typography. Or let's say if you want to add it, we can also add it here. So let's just make this typography as Roboto, which is the default, just so that we can see what effect it has. And you can see the text changes a bit, and that is just about it. There's no specific change here. Okay, so now what does this mat.theme actually does here, and why is it so simple to use? That's because everything now in Angular material is now derived from CSS variables. They're implemented as CSS variables, but they are basically the design tokens from material 3 specification. Okay, so if you want, you can actually go and you can actually inspect this in your code. So you can actually go in your developer console here, and in your HTML you can see that we have these specific CSS variables. Now these are all of the M3 system design tokens implemented as CSS variables. And if you go down here, you're also going to see the colors here that we implemented right now. So you can see that there is the background color implemented here, and you can see the primary color here, which is our Azure color here. So basically this theme Mixin, what this does is that it only emits the CSS variables. And so that makes it really simple to use. And it also allows you to sort of scope it to any level in your application. And we're going to see example of that when we color our buttons here to make them accent color and warm colors. But what's the next thing that we need to do? Of course, we need to make our dark mode work here. So what do we do for the dark mode? Okay. In our app, the dark mode is basically implemented as a dark mode class here. Okay. You can see that it adds the dark mode class to our body here when we actually change the dark mode here. So we actually need to keep the dark mode in the dark mode selector in CSS. So let's add a selector here. And now within the selector, we're gonna do the same thing. We can do include mat.theme, but here we don't want to change the typography. The typography will remain the same. So we don't want to emit those specific CSS variables for the typography. Great. So now for the color, we want to specify that it is a dark mode color, okay, which will sort of signal to the Angular Material theming API here that it basically needs to make the background dark, basically needs to make the text lighter, etc. So we need to specify a more detailed sort of specification. So instead of just a single color, we can actually give more details here as well. So in the primary color, we can actually give the same Azure as we would like, as we had in our light mode. You can give any other color as well if you would like to, for specifically for the dark mode. And then there's also a property for theme type, okay? All right. And we can just close this here, okay? So let's test this out. When we save this, you can see that this is the light mode. And when we click on the dark mode, you can see that some things change, but other things don't change. And you can see that some things are not looking that right. So the problem here is that we are not actually using the Angular Material background and the text color, which comes from the theme, as our application's background. So what we can do is that we have this content here. We want to change all of this content to actually use the system level CSS variables that are emitted by this mat.theme. Okay. So now if you're confused about system level variables, don't be, because in the Angular Material theming documentation, we have a special section added in version 19 for the system variables. So these system level CSS variables are something like this. So dash mat sys primary for the primary color, mat sys surface for the surface color, then errors and sys outline. And then there are also other colors which are less common, but they are included. So you can use these colors if you'd like to. Okay. Then these are all of the typography CSS variables, which we're not concerned about in this case. Okay. There is also a system variable called the background system variable. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to change that system variable for our content. All right. So let's go in our code here, and you can see that we have our app.component here. Now in our component here, you can see that everything is encapsulated in a content. So we can actually just go and we can go in our Sass file here, and in our content, we can directly use the background color, and we can use variable. Since the CSS variables is really simple, we can do mat sys and background. Okay. Let's test this out. When we save this, let's see what happens. You can see now the background becomes really dark according to our dark mode. And when we make it light, since it is based on the CSS variable, it will become light by itself. Okay, because the Angular Material theme Mixin is basically handling that. Okay, so but the text, you can see it's not looking really that great. So what we're going to do is we're going to also do the text color. And so in Angular Material design, color design specification, the CSS variables are basically, for the background color, it's just a simple, we say background. And then for the color which should appear on top of it, like text and icons with enough contrast and accessibility, we need to make this as on background color. Okay, mat sys on background. All right. So let's save this. And now you can see that all of our colors seem to be appearing fine. Okay, in the dark mode. Okay, so great. Our simple light and dark mode seems to work fine. And all we needed to do is just this basic sort of color setup and our theming. We just need to do these two classes here. Great. And since we're talking about Angular Material, I wanted to really showcase here my Angular Material dashboard, which if you are lookout for an Angular Material good starter template, you're most welcome to try this out and see whether it fits your needs. So it is in the latest Angular version 19, and it has a login screen like this. And you can log in. It's integrated by default with Firebase, but you can use other serverless providers or other auth providers as well. And you can see that we have this nice looking dashboard. Now, the great thing about the dashboard is that we can actually move things around on the dashboard, and we can also go into edit mode here, and we can also change the width and the sizes of this. Okay, so we can make this width larger. You can see according to your own specification, your own liking. So this is something different about my widget, and you can also actually just remove this if you'd like to. You can keep this inside of it, and you can actually remove this widget, or you can again, and you can see that everything animates nicely. Besides that, this dashboard also has the dark mode and the light mode. You can log out from this user, and it also has Tailwind CSS integrated in it. And we are also testing it out with Angular material components here. So you can see that all of the material components are going to work out of the box. Okay. So if you're on the lookout for a good starter template with Angular material, be sure to check this out. The link will be in the description. It's available on my Angular shop. And if you get this at this price point, you are also going to get all of the future updates that I'm going to be making to this starter template to make it a really killer starter template for Angular material. Okay, so now let's get back to the video. Okay, so our light and dark mode looks reasonably well, but you can see that the dark mode, to me at least, the dark mode seems to be a bit too dark. The background is a bit too dark. So this theme is fine. We can apply this sort of this global theme, this sort of default theme styles overall to the global system design tokens. But what if we want to change a specific token for the system variable? So for example, if you want to change a specific system variable, how do we do that? Well, there is an option, as I showed you here, of overriding. Okay, so you can do one of two things. Either you can use $overrides option in the mat.theme mixin itself, or you can use the mat.theme overrides mixin, which is a separate mixin in which you can specify the design token that you want to change, the system design token that you want to change. All right. So here we want to change the background, and we want to only change it in the dark mode. The light mode seems to be fine. So this is the great thing about the mat.theme mixin, because it is specifically targeted to CSS selectors. We can actually make it really granular. Okay. So here what we want to do is that inside of the mat.theme, we can override things here. We can specify an overrides, and then within this, we can actually give our token change that we want to change. Okay, so I want to make the background a bit less sort of dark. I want to make it a bit slate color, a grayish slate color. So I'm going to change just the background here, not the on background, which is the text color. And remember also that when we are using this mat.theme, this overrides mixin, we don't need to give the mat.sys here. We are just going to give the text that comes after that. All right. And this color here, then we can I would like to keep this color here, something like this. So this is sort of a grayish color. And now when we save this, you can see that we have a nice looking background, a lightish sort of dark color, lightish dark. So it's like a slate color, which looks more suitable to my eyes at least. Okay, for a dark mode. Otherwise it was getting too dark for my eyes. Great. So this is just an example for you to show how you can override specific tokens here. You can also override any other token that you would like to. Okay, and the list of the tokens is basically here. You can also inspect in your own developer tools to see which token you want. Just make sure that you don't include mat.sys here. In that case, you just need to include this specific token name here, okay, in the overrides folder. Okay, so the second way you can do is that remove this, just copy this here, and we're going to remove this. And then aside from this, we can also do mat.theme overrides. All right, and in this one we can copy the background just as we did before. Okay, so this is helpful for in those cases where you only want to override the tokens and you don't want to specify the mat.theme itself, and you can see the effect is the same. Great. This is related to the global styles, system level variables. You can see the list which you can get here. But what's great about this method is that this method is can also be used to actually override specific component styles or design tokens. All right. So as an example, you can see that the toolbar here. Now this toolbar here, in the previous sort of material design versions, we wanted this toolbar to actually be more closer to the primary color here. But for Angular Material 3 versions, the default toolbar actually does not have any color, or it has a very light sort of surface color to it. Okay, so we want to change that. So how do we change that? Now mat toolbar is basically a component. So what we're going to do is, in your documentation, the official documentation for version 19 in components, you're going to find out where the toolbar is. Okay, so you can see here's the toolbar, and there's a nice little option of styling here. Okay, and they have now specified that you can actually use mat toolbar overrides Mixin. So there is a Mixin for every component in Angular material, which you can use to override those specific component styles. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to target this to the mat toolbar itself. So we are going to go in my app component here. You can see that I have my mat toolbar here. So I want to target this. So I'm going to go in my app.component SAS file here, and my toolbar, I already have some styles applied to it. I need to include the use Angular material here first. Okay. And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same thing that we had here, mat tool, and I need to change the background color and I need to change the text color. Okay. So you can see that they already have the example of this. We can copy this ourselves as well here, but you can also see the whole list here of the tokens available for that specific component. So you can change all of these things for your your toolbar. Okay. So, and you can also see that the container background color by default is the mat sys surface, which is the system level CSS variable. So be sure to make that distinction between the system level variables, which are set through mat.theme, and then you have the component level variables, which are set through mat.component name dash overrides Mixin. All right. And in this case, I want to use not some specific color, but I want to use the primary color of my material theme. So how do we get that? I can get that using my CSS variable here, because everything is a CSS variable now. Okay, so I can do mat. I want to get the background as the primary color, and then for the container text color, I want to make this as mat sys on primary. Okay, on primary is the text that should appear on the primary color. When we save this and go back to our Angular dashboard, you can see that we now have the same color as we have for our buttons, which is our primary color, the azure palette. And when we go in dark mode, you can see that it swiftly changes, because in dark mode, it actually changes the primary color as well based on the sort of the contrast required in the dark mode itself. Okay. So you can see everything flows very nicely. So this is an example of how you can override a specific component color. So one last thing, you can see that in the initial thing that I showed you, the accent buttons and the want buttons were colored differently. So here as well, the mat.theme Mixin is going to help us. Okay. So because we can actually use this Mixin anywhere, we can scope this to any level. We can actually scope this to just to target these specific buttons as well. So we can create a different form of button. Now in the previous versions, if you go to your mat button specification here, in the previous versions, we used to do color accent or something like that. Now that is deprecated. So in my case, I am just going to use a simple class here, and I'm going to do class accent. And you can do other ways of doing this as well. The main thing is that you need to add this CSS selector or CSS class, which you can then target. Okay, so we have accent here, and then we have want here for the want button. Okay, and then you can actually define these accent and want classes inside of app component, but I'm going to make it in the global file, because these buttons you would need to use frequently in different places in the app. So you can do accent here, and then again you can use the same mat.theme. Now in this case, we only want to give the color, and we only want to give the, for the accent, let me say that I want to give the magenta palette. Okay, try this out how this looks, and you can see that we have our accent button, and it is nicely scoped within that accent class. So wherever we apply this accent class, it will have virtually a different theme, a different colored theme for that specific objects within that class. Okay, so this accent, and then we can just copy this, and for the want button, we can actually do mat.theme red here, red palette here, and now you can see we have our nice error button here that you can see. Great. So this is an easy way to add the accent and the want colors using the new mat.theme Mixin. So you can see the mat.theme Mixin is now really powerful, and the APIs are really simple. If I go back to these APIs, you just have three things that you need to remember: mat.theme, theme overrides, and mat.the component dash override. So this is in a nutshell everything that you need to theme Angular material components and the global Angular material app in whatever way you choose. Great. So I hope this was a nice intro to Angular material version 19 theming, and I hope you learned a lot in this and use it in your Angular projects. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, and also if you haven't already, please subscribe so that this video and my channel can reach more people. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with another interesting video.